So I'm sure many people will appreciate, your tears and the vulnerability that you're showing, just recounting, your journey, not only navigating the healthcare system and sharing what it's like with your cultural beliefs, and then hearing that your son is diagnosed with schizophrenia, and really appreciates it, because it's just that many people suffer alone, and sometimes parents are scared, not knowing what to do. And what is it, what was that like? Because you talk about Paul was fasting and praying and have that delusions of grandeur, and it just kind of seems like maybe it was a little bit of an antagonistic type of relationship, because here you are, you're feeling like the bad guy, it sounds like to me, from this end. You have to make those tough decisions. What was it like when you had to talk to Paul about putting in a tube down his nose to be fed, and being on medications, and perhaps some of the treatments that he had to that the doctors were recommending? What was that like?
Thinking back, it was hard. It was hard to call the police on my son, which I have to do because that's what I have to do to get him help. It was hard when the police came and I had to handcuff him and put him in the back of a car and take him to the hospital. It broke my heart because I've never seen my son or none of my family in handcuffs before, a police being called. That was tough. In the hospital, when I saw that they have to do what they have to do, what I have to approve, it was tough. It was the hardest thing a mother could go through, but it's a thing that a mother has to do for your child that you love. It's not an easy road with your kid being diagnosed with schizophrenia, with grandeur delusion, because my son has such grandeur delusion that it was just way out of, no doctor could talk to him, he out-talked them, everything, but it was hard. It was hard, it lot of tears, loneliness, because my friend that I know, no one ever have this experience. The only person I have to talk to was God. I got to talk to God, and when I finally start accepting my son in the hospital and start accepting him, because he was in there, go twice a day, go in the morning at 8 o'clock, and I left at 1:30 to go to my job at 2:45 to work the evening shift, and it was tough. And I have to guess it. I sat one morning, I cried and cried and cried, and I says, God, this is your son. And I know he prays to you. You love him, you love me. I know, Lord, that you give and you taketh. And I'm not going to say, why my son anymore. I'm going to say, help him. Why not him? This could be his journey. Why not him? Why not him should suffer like other family members like myself having the same thing? And that when I put that question before my God, and that's when my load lifted. That when I could move on. I pray and I moved on, because my load lifted up off my shoulder, because the Lord, this is your son. You give and you take it. Here is your son. If you want him to die, I have him for 19 years. I am so sad, but it's a reason why you take him. And if you want him to live, let him live. I want my son to live. I want him back. And that's when I have relief. That's when I have faith. That's when I can move forward and with full strength, full gusto, full spirit, moving on to say, I am going to save my son. I didn't know it was going to be what he is today, but I was going to get him to the hospital, at home where I love him and I could take care of him.
Hearing you say that was so that you had to stop, instead of saying why me, you had to say why not
why not
him. Because for me, that was when everything changed as well. I was being in that room, why me after a bit, and then it wasn't until after I was about to kill myself, I came back, and the question that came to me was, why not me? When I started to think about the kids born in a hospital suffering, and then it's like, I'm a grown man. Why not me? And it's interesting how that freed you asking that question. And that was what the same question freed me as well. And that allowed me to go forward by asking, why not me? And it was just, it was a correct question, because when I asked that, it was such a revelation, because I felt like lightning struck, touched my head, went all the way through to my toes. And it's like, that's the question you need to be asked. This entire time, that's the right question. Why not me? And then I stopped feeling sorry for myself, and I was able to move forward.
But then it takes a while.
Oh, it took a while, but
took a while,
but that was the first step in actually reclaiming myself, because from there I had to formulate a plan on how to actually move forward. And this was all something that I was thinking of, and that's how I slowly started branching out. And I never really talked to anybody else about it, what I was doing while I was doing it, and even afterwards. But that was where everything started for me.
I think that's really beautiful in the sense that, Carmen, I feel like you literally planted those seeds of hope, and, it's almost like you were, planting plants outside, and you were just creating like a fertile soil, for him. You talk about you praying to God, and you had that faith, and you really talk a lot about resiliency and that strength that you had, and you went from hopeless a little bit to powerlessness, and you kind of through that, walking and praying, you really come to that point where you were resilient, and, you showed strength and all that faith and belief. And then, you said, why not him? And then he kind of had that, even though it took him a while to get, to really start blooming, so to speak. You really laid that foundation, for him through the way that you navigated the healthcare system, the way that you advocated for him, the way that you loved him. And I think that was just a beautiful moment right there, to see you guys both came to that same conclusion and kept walking forward. Yeah,
without even talking to each other about it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know you came to that, and it was later on down the road that I came to that. But
well, it came to that. But as a parent, when you have a child with mental illness, your first thought is disbelief. But remember, one thing is that your child is your advocate. You are that child advocate. You have to believe, and you have to fight for that kid. In the hospital, I fought a lot of battles with the nurses. I fought a lot of battles with the social worker. I fought battle with the doctors. I fought a lot of battle for my son, because he's there, he can't defend himself. And a lot of times the nurses have no empathy on mental health patients. As a parent, you just can't stand back and don't do something. You are the advocate. You have to fight for them. You have to stay there, and you have to ask questions. You have to question everything. With my son in the hospital, he had his birthday in the hospital, we're there. His sisters will go on a Sunday, pedicure his feet, wash his feet, clean them, file them down, do everything. I fought the nurses for Paul privacy. You, as a parent, you have to be their advocate. You can't just stand back and say the doctors are all right. The doctors are not always right. The nurses not always right. I see a nurse, I've heard from Paul. He was in there, and the nurse pulled him out because he didn't want to walk around in the hospital. And they pulled the thing through his nose, the tube out of his nose, because they think he was lazy. And they have to call emergency to insert the tube back in Paul's nose. And 2 days after, my son finally get the courage or feel like talking to me, and he told me. And I had to fight for him. I had to fight with the nurses, talk to the doctors, and got that nurse suspended for a week. Because if he had hit that nurse for doing that to him, he'd be locked up in a different ward with no visitor. So if I wasn't going there all the time, you wouldn't know these things. As a parent with a child that has schizophrenia, any kind of mental illness diagnosis, you have to be there. You have to show love, because when you don't go, they think you don't. If the nurses, the doctor, you don't care. You have to be an advocate. When my son was in the hospital, came out in the hospital, and he wouldn't go to the doctor. I go every week. I make it my trip to the doctor for him. Tell the doctor how he's feeling, what he's doing, what he's not doing. So you have to be there for your child.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, we've grew up seeing you working hard, getting up every morning, going out, coming home, preparing this, you know, just, you've always been a fighter. That's the example we've had our whole life, living with you. And I think, you know, even with me going through that, you were still this, you know, the battlefield changed, but it was still a battle. It was still a fight, and you still rose to the challenge. And, you know, it only made sense that for me at some point that was what I know, you know, that's the example I had. And maybe that's why at some point I had to rise up and fight as well, because that's just, you know, we're fighters. That's the house that we grew up in. So, you know, that speaking of that resiliency and that determination and that, you know, I was getting beaten down for a while, but the foundation way at the bottom, that's what you know, you helped us build. So,
because I do remember when Paul was he went through hard times, shaking, trembling, this, that, with mouth drooling, all this kind of things. And I remember that was hard to see, hard to take, hard, just shaking, can't hold his hand, they just shake, drooling, the can wipe his mouth because of the medication. I remember when I went home, again for holiday by myself, my son called and said, Miss Carmen, I cannot live on the medication. I need to live. I can't survive. I cannot do nothing on the medication. Is it okay if I stop taking it and see? And he says, well, I'm against it, but let's try. Let's try. Try and see. And I went to his doctor and I talked to him, and he said, that's a bad idea. I say, I know it is, but he wants to survive, and the medication make him trembler. It makes him drool. It makes his weight on and everything. So let's try and see. And we did.
What was that like?
Scary, because I watched him like a hawk. I watched him, and I go to the doctor, and I will tell the doctor whatever is, because he wouldn't go to his doctor. He wouldn't make that trip. And the doctor says, Carmen, I know you wouldn't come, but please come. And every week, and from 1 week to every 2 weeks, to every 3 weeks, till once a month I go to the doctor. I remember I went and see a doctor once before Paul was discharged from the hospital, and the doctors, I says to the doctor that, do you think my son will recover from schizophrenia? And he says, you know, there's only about 1% of people who have schizophrenia fully recover. And I said to him, do you think my son Paul here has that chance? He said, no, Paul is not one of them. He won't recover. And I says, that's very sad to know. It makes me feel sad, because they are the expert. And I said, thank you, thanks to know. And I never went back to see him.
Yeah, this was a different doctor.
It's a different doctor. Yeah, until the one I went to see from the hospital doctor. Then I was seeing him, and he gave me a broader perspective. He says, well, he will recover, but for him to leave the hospital, my son has to go into a mental hospital to get recovery. Yeah. And I says to the doctor, no. He said, that's a big mistake you're making, because that's where he would recover. And I says, no, I'm going to take him home. He might not recover, but with me and his sisters, and love will protect him at home, and that's where he belongs, where we love him. Because if I put him in the mental hospital, he's so full of medication, I'll never get him back again. My son will be completely lost to me. Yeah. He'll be completely medicated and wouldn't even know himself. So at home, where we can love him, we may not get better, we can love him, we can take care of him, he's under my roof, it's much better. And that's the choice I chose.
Yeah, that was a long-term care facility, yeah. That one, right? Because I was going to the...
long-term care mental ward.
Yeah, that's what they wanted to put me with. They have a surgical tube in my stomach where they would, be feeding me through that. Which thankfully you said no. Because...
I wouldn't have this. I am my son's greatest advocate. And sometimes he will tell the doctors, my mom hate me and my mom this and my mom that. But he doesn't know how much I love him then. Yeah. Because I love him, that's why I'm doing all these things for him. And he have our full support with his sisters. Full support of whatever he do. And they're always there beside him. And that is what, when you have a child or sibling or husband or brother with mental illness, they need that support. They need that support, because if they don't have that support, they're going to be lost. And I couldn't have that for my son. We love him too much to lose him.
Yeah, I felt I was, I didn't feel like anybody wasn't. In fact, I felt my precise feeling was, leave me alone. But you guys wouldn't leave me alone. And that really helped a lot, especially like I said, it would have been easy for you to say, yeah, you know what, there's nothing I could do. Then I could send him there and, make it easy on yourselves. But had I been there, I wouldn't have been able to recover the way I have,
Yeah, so. All recover was a mystery to us and everyone that knew him. Still a mystery to us. We'll never know the reason, but only God knows.
I wanted to take you back to earlier. You mentioned that when you went to this new hospital, you felt that the new doctor kind of gave you a little bit more hope, better perspective, perhaps a better prognosis, and you really felt supported by him. But then you also later said that, while he was in that inpatient care unit, you kind of had to fight with the medical staff just a little bit. You mentioned social workers and nurses a little bit. Can you take us in? What was like, were they not listening to your concerns? You did mention that a nurse kind of forcefully removed a tube from his nose. Like, what were some of those experiences like? And then once you kind of talk to them and file a complaint, did you feel that you were being listened to after that and your concerns were being heard?
Yes. When at the hospital, it was different, but with the nursing system, nurses in the hospital don't have any empathy. Very few of them have empathy for mental health patients, even though they're there as a mental health patient, mental health nurse. They don't have any empathy. That's my experience. So even though the doctor were good, the nurses, you have to, when they gave my son his food and he would say, no, he don't want it, they would take it away. And I would say to the nurse, could you please leave the food there? Because he might says no, but as soon as everyone gone, he would eat. And they wouldn't want to do, and I have to say, please leave it. I will take the plate away when it's done and I'll bring it to the kitchen. So I would leave the food in my son's room and I will go, walked around, and when you come back, he would eat. But if you sit there with him, he wouldn't. I have to fight with them for that. I have to fight with them to say, don't pull him so much. Don't aggravate him so much. Just leave him. He is sick. He is sick, have empathy. And with the tube through his nose, what happened, they said he was lazy. He didn't want to leave his room to walk around. So they pulled him. Two of them was dragging him out of the room and dragged the tube through his nose. And that's what happened. And they were so scared, they called emergency. They put it back in his nose and they made no record of it.
Well, she pulled it out on purpose.
So when my son told me about 2 days after, I was livid. I had to go and talk to my doctor. I talked with a social worker and I talked with a head nurse. And that nurse was suspended for a week. And when she came back to work, I asked the head nurse, please do not allow this nurse here in my son's room because she might go in there and do something wrong again. And I don't want my son to hit her. And then they go locked him up in a more severe ward. So I have to advocate for that. I have to talk to the doctor. And then she didn't get the chance again to look after him. She left him alone.
Yeah, and also when they wanted to put a catheter in me, and then you had to tell them, you know what, like if he says he's not going to pull the tube out, he's not going to, because when I was being tied down, they didn't want to let me out to go to the shower because I felt I was going to pull the tube out. I said I won't, and they wouldn't believe me. They wanted to get a catheter in, and then you had to tell them, if he says he's not going to do it, he's not going to do it.
Yes, that was another part I had to fight with the head nurse also. Is Paul want to pee, and the nurse want to take his penis out of his pants to put it in the urinal. And I said, no hell way that gonna happen. No hell way you gonna do that to my son. I said to the head nurse, you know what? My son lost all his dignity here with mental illness. And that's one dignity he's gonna keep. As long as I'm his mother, none of you gonna touch his penis. If anybody gonna touch his penis, he gonna touch his penis himself. So you get you and they wouldn't. And I said to the head nurse, how would you feel if it was your husband sitting down there in mental health or any illness and stranger one come and finger his penis into a urinal? How would take off your nurse's badge, walk the walk in my shoes and see how you would feel? Could you please get my doctor? So she went and got, and I says, Paul says he will not pull the tubing out if he go to the bathroom to pee. And they wouldn't listen to him. So we got the doctor on the line, and I talked to his doctor, and his doctor said, bring the new head nurse in and talk to her. And she came back, and she says, Paul can go to the bathroom to pee. And I said, thank you very much. Things like that, you have to stand up for your kid right. You have to, because if you don't, it takes away all his dignity. I mean, he has no dignity. That's the only thing is that he's private. And I'm not going to sit there as a mother, let no nurse pull out his private of his pants to put into a urinal. No hell way, I tell you that. He's my son, and I say you ain't going to do it, you ain't going to do it.
Hey, and I didn't pull the tube out either. So.
And he didn't pull the tube out. If he says he's not going to pull the tube out, he's not going to pull the tube out. I was
pretty honest.
Because he know what it feels to put it back. He didn't want to be handcuffed down again. So he didn't do it, and all that did work out fine.
Yeah.
But I have to put my feet down. I have to stand up to the head nurse, but you know, not because you say you're head nurse. It doesn't mean I'm going to squirm. No. As a parent, you have to, with respect, of course, with respect, you have to put your feet down to defend your child, your family in the hospital, because if you don't, no one will.
It definitely sounds like you were a teacher of some sort, and like in empathy, right? Because it's just here you are saying that, like, I know my son, and, as a family member, I'm telling you, like, what will be helpful in his care. And you think normally they rely on the family member to actually help them in providing the best type of care, but you're saying that, leave the food there so that he can eat it when you leave, especially with delusions of grandeur.
Yeah.
It probably makes sense that he's not going to eat with anyone in his
presence.
Yeah, in his presence. So yeah, being an advocate is definitely very, very important, and you fought for
tooth
that.
and nail.
Mm-hmm.
This is my son, and I wasn't gonna lose. If I lose him, it's not because I don't fight for him. If I lose him, not because I didn't care. If I lose my son, not because I didn't love him. I lose him because that's what God wants. But as long as I have a fighting chance, I'm going to fight, which we did. Also, it is siblings. I would go on to work at the hospital at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I will leave at 1:30 and I go to work. His sister and cousin, after school over at 3:30, they'll go and they'll about 6 o'clock or 6:30 before they go home. So when I'm gone, they come to the hospital and they will stay there with him. Company, he's not talking to them. He don't say a word, but they're there. They're there to make sure that he's okay. He knows they're there and they love him and they leave because he knows they're there. And they love him that they'll go and spend all the after school time there. They'll do their homework, they'll talk and laugh, show him this. He doesn't pay any attention, but they are there. They care, and that's what's important when you have siblings. You cannot say, oh, my son is sick. I don't talk to my brother, he has mental illness. I don't know. You have to, because he needs you too. He needs you all.
Yeah, I think there's a point where you actually, I think you talked about this earlier, where you learn to kind of just let go of it, right? Because you were spending a lot of time there as well. And I think when you had that kind of breakthrough, you learn to kind of, there's got to be a balance as well too, right? Like you can't, you know, you spend some time there, but then you still have to worry about your mental health as well, your own physical health. So I think at some point you had that understanding, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I spent time there. I had to do that.
Yeah.
I used to go to the hospital Saturday. Yeah. And when I got that breakthrough, I've said, you have to take care of yourself. You cannot go. I don't go there every weekend. Yeah. I don't go every weekend I used to do. I used to go every weekend and sat there all day and stuff like that. When I had the understanding that, you know, you have to kind of let go and make God take his course, because he is the provider. He gives you and he takes. And then I still go to Smithson every day, because the sisters went to see him, but they don't have the right that I do have. So still I go Monday to Friday, and then after a while Paul would come home Friday evening to Sunday evening at home, and then he'll go back. But I still go to make sure things are right with you. I may not spend all the time I normally spend, but I go because I want to have my present feel that your mom is, and they say, oh, you just coming. They know me. Yeah, so they know me. They know I'm going to come. No funny business, because they know I'm going to come. And if he don't tell me that day, he'll tell me when he feel like telling me. And I'm at the desk complaining already. So I take it easy, but still, behind the back of my mind, I'm worried sick. I want him to be better. I want him to be okay. I want him to come home. I want to have my son back. No matter in what way, I want to have my son at home, where he loves and he cares, and people around him are not strangers who don't care.
Yeah, and I want to also highlight that, you know, when you talk about the nurses and some of them not having empathy, but I want to make it make a point of note that some of them were good. Not all. Yeah, not all. Yeah, exactly. I had some good ones, some bad ones.
There's not all. They could never be all bad. They could never be all bad. Exactly. There are some very good nurses. Yeah. There's some very good that advise me, take me aside and would advise me. Yeah. It was with my son, the urinal. Yeah. A nurse came to me and she says to Paul, you lucky your mother like this. Because she stick out for you. You lucky you have a mother like this. No. Because hadn't I speak up, if I hadn't spoken up, then someone would come and pull his penis out. But because I stood up and the girl says, good for you. The nurse, good for you. You're lucky to have a mother like this. You know, there's good nurse everywhere. There's good and there's bad. Yeah. But there was few of the bad ones, and on the night shift, most time in the hospital, the bad ones, them on the night shift. You know, so, and that's when things happen on the night shift. Yeah. But they were very good ones.